What's good, friends? List episode 65 of the Gamecast coming at you. In arguably one of the biggest financial moves in gaming history, Microsoft has agreed in principle to acquire ZeniMax Media and Bethesda Softworks for a staggering $7.5 billion. With Bethesda being home to some of gaming's biggest franchises, including The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Doom, and more, what will this mean for the potential exclusivity of its franchises within the Xbox ecosystem? Will this deal help secure the future financially of published series like Tango Gameware's The Evil Within, Arcane's Dishonored, and more? Will Microsoft focus on letting Bethesda keep semi-independence like Phil Spencer plans to do? And does this move finally force the hands of Sony and Nintendo to adequately answer what appears to be a dominant future in the world of on-demand gaming with Xbox Game Pass? Plus, Xbox Series X and S pre-orders sold out almost instantly, but what does the record day mean for availability of the console the closer we get to launch? All of this and really so much more on the newest jam-packed episode of the Game Pass Gamecast.
Now the fun begins.
Richard.
Stop! You violated the law.
Welcome back to another episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversation around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games alike, and our dope giveaways. I am your host, as always, Travis White, aka Travelus on most internet platforms. Joining me, as always, my partner in crime, Mike P-Pack. Mike, what's good? What's going on? And as always, what have you been playing, man?
Guys, for the first time in a long time, I've been playing something different. Guys, this is episode 65, and I think for the past 40 episodes, I've had the same exact answer. But this one, I still have been playing a lot of Halo because there's a tournament. We're recording Thursday. So the night that you hear this, there's a tournament. So I will be playing Halo. But dude, I 100%ed Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, and I'm like 80% of the way through number 2 because I bought the remastered edition on PC.
Hell yes. Please talk to me about that, because I've been wanting to get in to play that game, and literally, like, every game that it's just been one of those things that's like, I want to get in and play it. I want to get in and play it. Because I'm like you, I have so much nostalgia for the original series, Thug, the original style of Tony Hawk games, but, like, just for some reason, every other game that I want to play keeps coming up, and I play it before that. But I think it's just because I know it's there, and it will always be there, and I can dive into that at any point. But please, catch me up. Tell me about everything. Give me your impressions now that you're pretty fucking balls deep into it. Give me your, review of it. Give me your, shoot from the hip. Let me know all about this game.
Honestly, for the $40 price point, I don't know that there's much better of a value in games right now as far as just straight up like what you receive for your investment. Essentially, it's the first and second Tony Hawk, plus there's a third version that lets you go into free play. You can go skate in different parks. You get the park creator like you did, in the earlier versions of the game. I think most notably, that might have been something that became a thing in Tony Hawk's Underground, if I can remember correctly. But basically, it's everything you loved about the first two games, except for extremely modernized. Because if you went back and played those games didn't age very well. Not only were the graphics poor, but it was kind of clunky. Skating and everything, doing tricks was all very clunky. And they have done an amazing job at modernizing the game and making it a lot more enjoyable, just as far as how smooth the tricks and combos you can pull off are. It's just insanity, how awesome the game has actually become. And I can't say enough about this game for $40. Now, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, if you're a seasoned veteran, you might get through those games a little quicker than you might remember doing so as a kid, because it is so smooth. It's so easy to pull off some insane combos if you're a veteran. But there's a pro side to this because I felt like they did such a fantastic job, making the game so much fun for us old heads that love those games. The negative side of this is because the games are so smooth, it's making me like I want more. I want Tony Hawk's Underground remastered. Like I want Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 remastered. Like I want those games remastered because I severely need those experiences in my life. Not only for the nostalgia point, but it's just fucking fun. It is just so easy to bump into one of these games, pick it up for 30, 40 minutes, get some goals done, maybe complete 1 or 2 parks, and then drop it and move on with your day. I can't say enough about this game. It's been so much fun. I don't have any like nitty gritty stuff because I haven't really played ranked runs, like ranked sessions online or anything of that nature. So I don't have much to report on that. I've just specifically been playing the single player and it's just been so cool. Maybe someone could say, maybe I wanted more, maybe more goals on a certain park or things of that nature. But this game feels like a complete remaster, not a complete recreation. Or, we had that distinction talk maybe a few months ago when, what kind of is the differentiator between the two. This just feels like a complete remaster, which is awesome. Of course, no new parks and things of that nature, but it is what it is. We'll take it. I love it. I've had so much fun so far, and I can't wait to have more fun with it because I don't see myself putting it down, very, very soon. And it's really cool because in the ranked play section, which is like the third option, you can pick free skate where you just go skate and put up as many points as you can. There's a single session and then there's a speed run option to see how fast you can do the goals. So you can kind of just speed run. It's like pretty welcoming to the speed running community because you can just figure out how fast you can beat one specific park, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think this was very much a toe in the water for the future. And because I think seeing an Activision knowing how well Vicarious Visions has handled all of the, remakes or, not remasters, but remakes of these games from the ground up, how well they've been received by fans, how much that nostalgia for those franchises and, prime 90s franchises, that era of gaming, the PS1, N64 era of gaming, the 64-bit. That era is so prime for now these games to be remastered. And we're hearing rumors of, and I didn't include it in Button Mash this week just because, one, there's a fuck ton of news we have to go over today, which, shocker, you probably already know by now, but we'll wait and touch on that later. But plus it's kind of centered around PlayStation news, but there's a rumor going around that now there is some validity to the Metal Gear Solid Complete remake rumors, that, it is happening and it is going to be at least be on PS4 and then eventually PC. But, that era of gaming is so prime for remakes, and like you said, those era of games don't necessarily hold up completely. Even playing a game like I've been playing Super Mario 64 on stream recently, and I'm talking to chat, and it's like you don't know how well or how great you have it until you go back to those games. Like Super Mario 64, absolutely a fucking fantastic game, but then you go back and play after having the amenities of a Galaxy and beyond, and specifically Super Mario Odyssey, when we're talking about these sandbox level games, that has your right thumbstick is a free-forming or, free-flowing 360 camera that you have, compared to Mario 64 when it's like snap control camera that was used with, the directional C buttons. So, like, you don't realize how good you have it and how clunky that is still, but it's still a great game. And kind of the point with these games is the basis of those games were so good and so perfect. And I've talked about it before with the Tony Hawk games, especially. Like, that niche of sports titles transcends the sports genre. That it isn't, we don't have to worry about, like, games like that fit so well into more of an arcadey aspect that you don't have to necessarily worry about, oh, here's a yearly release. Oh, well, where it could be that almost the UFC style that we're seeing from EA now, where every couple years you'll get one come out, that it's like, we're just going to update that. We're going to provide different things like that, where you could release this, a new Tony Hawk game whenever they eventually come out with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 6, which personally, I hope they just come out with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, like fresh start, whatever they do, from the ground up, or even taking that and doing like, Nigel Houston's Pro Skater or something like that, bringing somebody modern, but using this engine and using the basis of this game and bringing it, forward. But I'm so happy that this worked out, because I think now Activision is seeing so much value left in these properties, these nostalgic properties, that they can bring forward and mold for this new age, because the basis was so good in 1990, whatever, but the technology was just so limited that those games benefit the most from full remasters. Like, PS2 era, Xbox era, yes, there's some clunk with it, but we were getting it. I mean, they figured out how to do first-person controls on a console at that point. With a free-flowing camera, it worked. By the time you got from Xbox to Xbox 360, realistically, you could just remaster those games with some added textures, and you're probably good. Where these games from this era do best as a full remake. I mean, even looking at, Ocarina of Time on 3DS was pretty much a full remake of that game, and it benefited so much from gyro controls and things like that, that it's the definitive version of this game. And that's what this game seems to feel like, the way you're talking about it, that this is what they envisioned for these games in 1990, but obviously just didn't have the technology to provide it. So I'm just so happy that this game exists, that this game, or these games, I should say, exist, and that, more importantly, they're reviewing well, but even more so, they're selling well, which means that we're going to get more, because Activision, being one of these monolithic, huge third-party publishers, what talks to them is fucking money. If it makes money, they're interested in it. Because really, they've been resting on their laurels on Call of Duty for so long that it's like, there's no diversification with their portfolio anymore. And now we're starting to see that come through with, hell, and it's even spawned a brand new fucking Crash Bandicoot game in 2020 coming out in a couple weeks, or hell, I think this week actually it comes out. So it's just crazy that we're at this point where most people get pissed when people go back to the well and, you can't make new ideas, blah, blah, blah. You keep remaking games. Well, it's for good reason this time. And I think Activision, in a really positive way, has found that niche corner. And with the Spyro games, too. I completely forgot about them. Even though they're done by Toys for Bob, not Vicarious Visions. But still under the Activision banner. But yeah, so that's great. I'm excited to eventually jump into that. I'm definitely going to. On my end, go ahead.
I just wanted to build off of that. I know we have a lot on the docket, but I basically just want to say, like, for this particular situation, just kind of how you were bringing it up, the point of how if it sells, Activision's going to want to do it, but then there's the naysayers that are like, why can't you just make a new game? And it's like, I think, Tony Hawk, I kind of got into this loop where they were trying to make more simulation style of games, which, like, to each their own, like, that's cool. People enjoy everything a little differently, but I think you just need to leave that to Skate if they ever make it again, because 100%. I think, the success of this game will show them, like, hey, even though our games are a little arcadey, they're a little cheesy, blah, 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 like, people love our games. And I think that goes without saying, but I really hope that the success of this game, like you said, we get to see potentially more remakes. I wouldn't hate it. And, you said maybe just start a new Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. Again, another thing that I would not be opposed to. I also would love to see another Tony Hawk's Underground, because I think having a little bit of if you are wanting open world or things of that nature, I don't know that it's necessary, because the game has been doing really well. But if you do want to update the experience, I think it would be really cool to make a new Tony Hawk's Underground and give it a little bit more open world feel. I think that would be awesome. So I really hope this sparks them to continue to support this IP. And I really hope, not only because Tony Hawk's a fucking awesome person, just in general, period. Yes. He's amazing. And he was one of those guys that, Tony Hawk probably made the most money out of this deal, but there's been a few little documentary clips where it's like just 5-minute or 10-minute videos from the original skaters that were included. And they have nothing but great things to say about Tony, because while Tony was rising to absolute superstardom and making the most money, yeah, he made more money off of this than they did. But at the end of the day, like those people, the Kareem Campbells of the world, the Chad Muskas, who outside of the skating community weren't necessarily seeing a ton of support, like they made a lot of money off these games too in a way that they wouldn't have made it otherwise. You know what I mean? So ultimately, you know, capitalism, Tony Hawk made the most money. Obviously, it made business sense for him. But I think it down to a root level with the way he's treated those people throughout time, the way they speak so highly of him. This was a way that Tony Hawk was unquestionably the most popular skater of all time, but it was a way to kind of bring other people with him to the stardom, to the money, you know, because those people in these interviews with Tony Hawk, you know, Chad Muska said, I had never gone to tours before and had people recognize me that were like, dude, I play you, only you in the video games. You're so awesome. You know, his merch was selling and things of that nature, which is just an overall feel good story. So I really hope for everyone's sake that they continue to, you know, keep making these games. And I've been playing Leticia Buffoni right now, and she's a girl who's our age, 27, and she's a popular skater now, but she was included in the game. So I hope we see, you know, a lot of younger people that are in the skating community right now being added to these games. And I really hope there's another Tony Hawk's Underground, and it, you know, helps out all the skating community, because it's a little bit niche. Like, people like extreme sports. It's not as popular as it was in the late 90s and early 2000s, but it's still really respected because people really enjoy this arcadey style of game. So I just hope that we continue to see these types of games supported going forward. And I hope, you know, maybe one day we see another Amped, because clearly there's still arcade, you know, support for these games. People still want to play them. So hopefully it spawns, you know, another snowboarding game and things of that nature.
No, definitely. And I totally agree that, you know, leave EA to cover skate, leave them to do the simulation style skateboarding game.
That's their thing.
That's their bread and butter with it. And rightfully so, because skate's fucking awesome. But let Activision and let especially Vicarious Visions, hopefully they're the ones who get to control that IP moving forward. Let them work with this. Let them take the reins and run with this and make this arcade experience that a lot of people want, that's so perfect for pick up and play mentality. So definitely excited for the future with Tony Hawk, especially for what you're, you know, how you're talking about it. But on my end, I'll make it kind of quick because there hasn't been a ton that I've been playing in the Xbox ecosystem, unfortunately, this week, just with everything going on, and some other things I've been playing. I've been replaying God of War and things like that, just because I want to get the platinum in that. But very soon, and I'm not pissed off at her because she was so tired and she's been working her ass off this week, but we only got to play like 20 minutes of the last chapter of Tell Me Why, and I'm really pissed, and I know she is too, because we both want to finish it. She was like falling asleep, like, God damn it, we can't play this tonight. I'm like, son of a bitch, I want to talk about it this week. So this is my promise. Next week, I will have that finished. I will give my review in full, you know, context, I guess. No spoilers, of course, but of Tell Me Why, and how Don't Nod's newest game hopefully lives up to what I'm experiencing with it. But yeah, on my end, just when we were, you know, on PC, I guess, playing still Left 4 Dead 2 with you guys, and I'm so happy that's kind of come back into the fold, and, you know, hopefully later this weekend, we'll get to play it more, and especially now, too, with the new, you know, that community-driven map pack and expansion that's coming out is going to be great. So that'll give us some new content with that. But
I think with all five of us, we'll be able to play Among Us, too.
And Among Us, too. Yeah, absolutely. And it was really interesting to see that the dev team with them change their projection with the game, that they decide to cancel Among Us 2 development for it and just fully support just the original Among Us and build that game from within, basically. So kudos to them, because that had to be a hard decision to make, and because that's a large undertaking to do. So I'm excited to see the future where that game goes. So, and especially too, say what you will about him, but being hands down, knock on wood, you know, what I take with a grain of salt, I guess you want to say this, but the most popular streamer, arguably, in Ninja, having his Twitter profile picture be an Among Us character, I think you're doing something right. So, you know, that game's popularity is going to be carried by Twitch. So, you know, great for them. I'm excited to see where that game goes. But yes, I'm excited to get back in and play that game. But Anyways, we got a lot to talk about this week, so I don't want to ramble too long on my end. Mike, let's end the button mash this week real quick before we head into our big topic for this week. And yes, we only have one big topic because it's a fucking megaton topic. So let's get in the button mash. We'll run through some of these quick hit news stories first, and then we'll start talking about the big fish in the sea. So kicking it off, Microsoft has revealed that more Xbox Series X and S units will be available when the console launches on November 10th, following, quote, record-breaking demand for pre-orders. The official Xbox Twitter account thanked fans for the excitement on September 22nd as pre-orders went live around the world. The tweet notes that those who didn't manage to secure a successful pre-order should, quote, sign up with retailers for updates as more units will be made available upon launch date November 10th. Demand was through the roof whenever pre-orders launched, causing havoc at a number of major online US retailers, including Best Buy and Amazon, with most retailers now reporting the consoles are sold out. I was able to get one on Amazon and Best Buy. And I canceled the Best Buy one just because Amazon, you could, if I decide I want to go with an S, I got an X pre-order. But if I want to, I'm kind of still up in the air if I want to get an X or an S, or just go the route of all access, which I didn't do yet. I just straight up bought it. But I can cancel that like up until the day of launch with Amazon. So before they charge you or whatever. So I feel good about that. Got my pre-order in. We'll see how that goes. But while Series X and S pre-orders went quickly, there was also a jump in Xbox One X sales, Microsoft's soon-to-be last-gen console. According to Amazon's sales rank, there was a notable bump in Xbox One purchases on the day Xbox Series X and S went up for pre-order. Amazon says there was a 747% jump. There are plenty of reasons why the Xbox One X saw a spike in sales beyond just human error, though there was plenty of that to go around also. One Twitter user announced they ordered an Xbox One X by mistake, while another social media user shared how they had to check multiple times to make sure they were ordering the correct Xbox X system. And just to give some context for all this, because I think some of this headline was being carried away a little bit, over on Twitter, Benji Sales, who is a fucking fantastic follow on Twitter. By all means, if you're interested in any analytics for the industry, any business interpretations, anything like that especially, but mostly on sales and logistics within the gaming industry on the business side, check out Benji Sales at Benji Sales. Go over there, follow him. He's fucking fantastic to follow and really great dude too. He stated, though, Xbox One X has been out of production since July and selling extremely low volumes all summer. A 700% increase in raw units is small. One X won't be on store shelves alongside Series X in November. This, quote, 700% volume increase on Xbox One X won't even be enough to shift its NPD number by much more than a couple thousand units at absolute best. So it's all about perspective. If you sell one thing and then next week you sell another thing, you've gone up 100% in your sale rate. So you got to kind of look at it at actual raw numbers, but good clarification. And then one last note on the new consoles before we move on to Button Mash. It looks as though many large content creators and media outlets have begun to receive their review builds of the Xbox Series X. Not quite final version, but pretty much damn near finished, as they clarified. And Jeff Keighley specifically seems to be revealing the first hands-on gameplay impressions himself, which, as far as I know, that remains true. We'll see how it goes throughout the weekend, and we'll keep you guys updated. But so look for some hands-on impressions within the coming week or so, I'd say. Speaking of Jeff Keighley, the Game Awards are set to return this year on December 10th because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. There will not be a live audience this year, obviously, but host Jeff Keighley announced that this year's award show will be hosted from 3 international locations: Los Angeles, London, and Tokyo. So that'll be pretty cool. As part of a consultation on loot boxes, the UK government is looking to hear from, quote, video game players and adults responsible for children and young people who play video games. That's the most boomer thing I think I've ever heard. Before I continue, but that you play the Marios, right? That's what in your play game thing. That's the most boomer thing I've ever heard. Come on, get it together a little bit. To figure out if they, quote, may encourage or lead to problems gambling. Surveys will inform the government's review of the Gambling Act of 2005, which could lead to a new regulations on loot boxes. The call for evidence will run until the 22nd of November of this year and is also seeking consultation from video game businesses, researchers, and organizations. Back in January of 2020, England's top mental health nurse Claire Murdoch, I believe, released a report calling for a review of microtransactions, noting that loot boxes were, quote, setting kids up for addiction. The UK government then formally announced a call for evidence in June 2020 to, quote, gather evidence and understand the impact of loot boxes. Oh, my mouth is trying out. Activision has denied reports claiming Call of Duty accounts were hacked, following claims on the internet saying that there was a major data breach. In the past week, numerous claims online reported that as many as 500,000 Activision accounts were hacked. Reports of this hack spread online across social media and various Call of Duty online communities, with many urging users to reset their passwords and add two-factor authentication. Holy shit.
Button mash struggle today.
I know, it really is. I was starting off good. I'll give myself credit. I was really good off the rip, but then we got into some of this, like, I think it was the UK gambling one that turned me off. But the 2FA, like, you know what I'm talking about, so your account doesn't get fucking waxed. Anyways, while 2FA and resetting passwords are always recommended, even when there's no mass data breach, Activision says these reports are inaccurate. In a statement issued on Twitter, Activision writes, quote, reports suggest Activision Call of Duty accounts have been compromised are not accurate. We investigate all privacy concerns. As always, we recommend that players take precautions to protect their Activision accounts as well as any online accounts at all times. You will receive emails when major changes are made to your Call of Duty accounts. If you do not make these changes, please be sure to follow the steps provided. Blizzard has announced official dates for its online-only BlizzCon 2021 celebration, dubbed, let me get this one right, BlizzConline. Yeah, they really went with that. BlizzConline, combining con and online, I guess, is scheduled for February 19th and February 20th, 2021. And while Blizzard doesn't have a lot of info on what will be shown yet, it did set expectations with its announcement, while also announcing some community events and plans. Quote, while circumstances are keeping us from gathering in person this year, we're putting together a little something early next year to channel the spirit of BlizzCon into the form of an online show, Blizzard said with its announcement. We still have a lot of planning to do, and it'll be some time before we're ready to share more details, but we wanted to provide a heads up on how you can be a part of the online fun. Marvel's Avengers 1.3 patch addresses over 1,000 player reported issues, Crystal Dynamics has announced. The patch notes can be read in full on the Marvel's Avengers website, where the development team issued a short statement thanking the community for its, quote, patience and support throughout the game's first 2 weeks of launch. The 1,000 plus issues addressed by the version 1.3.0 patch includes everything from, quote, progression stoppers to small graphical fixes, and addresses problems with the game's combat, user interface, matchmaking, and more. Crystal Dynamics has also suggested a few workarounds to some known issues in the game, which can be found in this Reddit thread. FIFA 21, finally, will not receive a demo this year, so the game's developers can focus on, quote, delivering the best full game experience. EA Sports took to Twitter to reveal the news, noting that players can still get early access to the game by subscribing to EA Play. FIFA's yearly demo is a long-standing tradition, which is why this news might be shocking to some fans of the veteran football series. Quote, we made the decision to focus our development team's time on delivering the best full game experience for current and next-gen consoles, EA's statement reads. If you still wish to check out the games ahead of launch, EA Play subscribers will be able to jump in and trial FIFA 21 for 10 hours from October 1st, ahead of the game's official release date on October 9th. So, Mike, before we get into our big topic for this week, after I had to stumble through a couple of them, because there was a lot of fucking shit to read on all this, anything stick out to you want to touch on again? We're talking Xbox pre-orders that kind of went shitty a little bit. We're talking Activision with Call of Duty, all that jazz, loot boxes. Anything stick out to you?
Yeah, I think the thing that there's a few of these that are going to stick out to me. I think one of the biggest things is the discussion on whether or not gambling on whether loot boxes are gambling or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think unarguably, if you look at how they're designed, it is 100% gambling. I don't think you can really even deny that, especially when you're talking about games especially with like CS:GO, whenever, you know, they can have like real world money involved. I mean, I know there's no third party anymore,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have to think about it in a way that's like, okay, well, yeah, of course, while you can't sell the money for skins or sell the skins for money anymore, you can still sell them on the Steam market, and it's as good as money because you can buy games with it and everything. So for me, that's what I kind of look at when I just kind of try to figure out where I feel or how I feel on the matter that is. And then alternatively, on the flip side of that, then you're going to run into the problem where now companies are going to have to charge a lot more for their games if they can't get loot or if they can't use loot boxes, right? So that is a big deal for me because I think that's going to directly correlate with if games are going to become more expensive over time, is if they are able to use loot boxes to supplement their income.
Which we're already seeing now heading into next gen. I mean, the PS5, I should say Sony first-party games at least, Sony came out and said, hey, they're ranging from $49.99 to $69.99. So a $10 increase, really, from that $39.99 to $59.99, price range that we've seen the past couple of generations. So, we're already seeing that. So that's where I'm really curious to see how what you're talking about with the loot boxes, like how they're going to defend that now. You know what I mean?
Right. I just think it's like, I don't think you can really argue that it's gambling. That's just my opinion of it. But another thing that I really wanted to touch on just with Button Mash really quickly, the BlizzCon that's coming up, really hoping to see either a Diablo remastered or footage from the new Diablo. I'm a huge Diablo fanatic, so that would be like, if I only see that, like if that's all I see from that, I'll be happy. So looking forward to that. Then just want to touch on the Xbox Series X and S units debacle. Obviously, we know the demand for Xbox Series X is going to be very high with Bethesda being acquired and everything that Microsoft is doing going to the next gen. They're doing their best to really compete with the other, especially with Sony, in a very different way that I don't know that Sony is going to be able to keep up with at this point in time. Eventually, they're going to answer it, but as of right now, Sony doesn't really have an answer for it. So it's really cool to see Microsoft. That's kind of, we've discussed it on this pod at length about how Microsoft can get back in the game. So I think their game plan is working perfectly as of right now. Clearly, with the Xbox One X going up in purchases, clearly that is a lot of user error. I would say a ton of user error. And that is one of the concerns we had whenever they came out with this name. We said, well, how many people are going to confuse it? Well, we have our answer. A lot of people are going to confuse it. So it's a little bit of a bummer in marketing. I just think they could have done better, but I don't make enough money and I'm not on the end to make those types of decisions. So I won't bash it too much, but I will say that it is kind of crappy for the people that have experienced that. But I think overall you can right your wrongs, you can return them or cancel your orders. So that's going to be cool. And I think they're going to fill a lot of people's pre-orders up front. If you didn't get the first round of pre-orders, I think your console's still going to come on time, basically, is where I'm going. I think they needed to kind of gauge the interest, and we'll see what happens. I don't know that COVID will have interrupted it so much that there's going to be scarcity, unless, again, it's a Nintendo situation where they just create scarcity for no reason other than to create it. And then people from Nintendo and these companies will be like, ooh, and the video will be like, wait a minute, if you got your graphics card, don't sell it online for $8,000. And it's like, don't create false scarcity. Make the fucking thing. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's not my problem that people are going out and doing that. Is it shitty? Absolutely. I'm not the biggest fan of people who resell. I hate resellers, quite frankly, because it fucks with especially like the concert market, because we've experienced it where we've tried to go to concerts and resellers are online selling the same concert ticket that was $40 for $150 and thinking people are going to buy it. And it's like, no, dude, I just won't go. It's not worth it to me to help you make money because you're a scumbag. So there it is. That's how I feel about Button Mash. And I'm fully ready to go on into the big topic, which, I mean, if you are an Xbox or a Microsoft or a Bethesda or a gaming fan, I think is like, if you haven't heard this story, come out from under your rock, but we'll give you our info on it and I'll let Travis take it away from here, unless you have anything else to say about Button Mash.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head on pretty much everything. Everything I was going to say. I mean, pre-orders were a dumpster fire as kind of expected. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because that falls a lot on, not on Xbox and Microsoft necessarily, because they were completely transparent, completely perfectly set up on how to do, because that's what the biggest thing, as somebody who's also a fan of Sony, I was also very pissed off, and it was a scramble to get a PS5 pre-order. That, everyone's like, well, fuck, it's going live now. Wait, what's going on? Like, they're not saying anything. And info's trickling out secondhand where at least Xbox and Microsoft set up saying, yo, here's the date, here's when it comes out, here's how much, here's what you're going to pay. We also have all access available for you at these times. It's going live at these retailers at this time in your country, in this country, in this country, in this, like, it was transparent, it was perfect. So that is not on, to me, that is not on Microsoft. That's more on GameStop, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, where, and even on their end, it's hard to combat a lot of bots and things like that are scooping these up, but it is what it is. I mean, people are going to be able to get these systems, there's going to be more chances to get these systems heading to launch. It's just the initial, like, ripe first batch. But, if you're interested in getting one of these systems, stay on top of it. Follow Wario64 on Twitter. Follow these deal accounts. Follow, IGN deals. Like, accounts like that will turn the notifications on for them. You'll get updates that if you really want one of these systems, you'll be able to get on it. So it does take a little bit of work to get these. But, Mike, let's head into our big topic. And I've got to tell you what, man. You know what?
Oh, cracked a beer?
You know what? It is a special day. It is a special day. I've been wanting to talk about this all fucking week because realistically, we've talked about this before and kind of skated around it like months and months ago, like almost a year ago. But that's beside the point. The big topic this week, Bethesda, Microsoft, together. Not even Decade of Dreams. This is the fucking century of dreams. We've been having for the last, decade, the last decade. I've seen things come up that I've always wanted. That it's like they're fucking remaking Final Fantasy VII. They're fucking Tony Hawk. Even throw that in there. Like, that was a big one for me that I'm like, fucking finally. Like, things like that. I mean, even just getting some acknowledgement of Elder Scrolls fucking 6 2 years ago that, yeah, we are moving on past Skyrim. We're fucking making something else. This is Century of Dreams. This is something that I would never really have thought was going to happen the time it did. Being so close to the next gen console launch, and especially only literally 24 hours before pre-orders went live. But let's set the table. Let's set the table before we get in too deep. Let's set the table.
I want to ask you a question though. Do you think that Microsoft's basically willingness to give Morrowind a shot as being exclusive on Xbox? I know, there's a whole lot that goes into acquiring a company like Bethesda and ZeniMax Media, but do you think that loyalty, do you think the loyalty runs back that deep? Or do you think that's just like another chip and like if they were making a pros and cons list, that was just like another pro? Like, they gave us a shot to put Morrowind on the Xbox console and be the only exclusive console. Or do you think it was like, that's just like a non-factor and that doesn't really matter? It's just like a cool little tidbit of what happened back then.
I 100% think so, yes. And I think that because if you listen to pretty much, Todd Howard doesn't do a lot of interviews anymore. Really doesn't. I mean, he did one, which I highly recommend listening over to Major Nelson's YouTube account. Go over there. It's an interview that he did with Phil Spencer, Pete Hines, and Todd Howard about the acquisition. It's like a 25-minute interview. It's fucking fantastic. But Todd even says, this is the first interview I've done in like a year. Like, he rarely does them anymore. But if you listen to him talk about partnerships and, licensing and things like that, and like working on these promotional things, he always chimes in that Microsoft has been one of our best partners long term. They've always supported us. And that's not just now. I mean, there's an interview with Ryan McCaffrey over at IGN that he did for IGN Unfiltered, like, I think it was like right after E3 last year, which is really good. It's like an hour-long conversation, but watch that. And he even says, like, he talks about them coming to Bethesda, wanting to bring a, CRPG, hardcore RPG experience to their first system, their first home console with controller. And Todd wasn't on the actual directive staff at that point, I think. No, he was, I think. I think he was at that point. He was creative director on that. But bringing them saying, like, you know, Microsoft saying, hey, we want to bring this experience here. And Bethesda thinking, we don't know if that's going to work. We have no idea. We don't, how can that work? How can that? But then they started seeing, like, oh, early builds of Halo, early builds of seeing these first-person experiences be able to be played on a controller and figuring it out. And Microsoft showing faith in them, which that game started to put them on the map. Like, that was the real first, like, a casual audience fucking knew who Bethesda was at that point. Or at least specifically Bethesda Game Studios, the first party Bethesda, you know, developed games. But I totally think so, because he's said it multiple times, and I don't think it's bullshit. I don't think it's, you know, I don't think it's fluff. I don't think it's just pumping tires or anything like that by any means. I think it is actually like Todd showing, like, hey, we really wanted this. We really wanted to work with Microsoft, and we were going to go and, you know, sell, and Bethesda being a private company, not having to worry about, you know, they'll have investors, but they're not worried about stockholders or anything like that, that they can say, you know, they could pick and choose who they want to go to, and they weren't hurting financially. So they wanted to get a partner that worked best for them and let them be them still. And Microsoft, he even said, have always been like that since Morrowind. So, but let's set the table at least a little bit. I'm sure everyone knows about what's going on, but obviously, and I pulled this from Joe Scrubbles over at IGN, because I think this just gives us a really good, broad set the table of the announcement. Xbox has announced that it plans to acquire ZeniMax Media, and with it, Bethesda Softworks, creators and publishers of The Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Wolfenstein, Doom, Dishonored, Quake, Starfield, and more. It was announced by head of Xbox Phil Spencer in an Xbox Wire post on Monday. Microsoft will acquire ZeniMax Media for $7.5 billion, which is 3 times the $2.5 billion it paid for Mojang and Minecraft in 2014. And the formal purchase is expected to close in the second half of 2021. And the biggest thing is, Mike, they paid cash, or they're going to pay cash for this. This is the Scrooge McDuck
back
shit.
To tractor trailer truck money.
This is
back
the
to
fucking
tractor trailer trucks.
This is the Scrooge McDuck shit that we fucking talk about now. Y'all were thinking, like, oh, they go to the well on this Scrooge McDuck thing with Microsoft. No, they're paying cash. This isn't like, oh, we're going to do, you know, we're going to do this much in stock. We're going to do this much in, you know, assets that we have we could transfer to you. And this. No, motherfuckers are paying cash. And they're closing, like, in the second half of 2021. Cash.
Don't they know there's a national chain shortage in America right now?
$7.5 billion in probably a year's time paid, like, just fucking off the books. That's wild. That's just crazy. So the deal includes ZeniMax Media as a whole, Bethesda Softworks, the overarching publishing end of Bethesda, Bethesda Game Studios, which is I believe it's 4 studios now that encompass the quote-unquote, I say, first-party developed Bethesda games, your Elder Scrolls, your Skyrims, or your Elder Scrolls, your Fallouts, your Starfields, things like that. id Software, creators of Doom, and originally Wolfenstein, but Doom primarily now. ZeniMax Online Studios, ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, Arcane, Dishonored, Deathloop coming up, which we'll get into. Machine Games, who handles Wolfenstein now. Tango Gameworks, who handles The Evil Within, an excellent series. Alpha Dog and Roundhouse, 2 newer studios. So, Mike, this is... I'm just going to go into it right off the cuff, man. You know, like me, as somebody who is both a long-term Xbox fan, a long-term Bethesda fan. Now, we're people who just yell on the internet about both of those things passionately from time to time and week to week. You know, what is your just gut reaction to this deal? It almost feels like it's one of those moments of, where were you when X happened? Only this time it's for nerdy shit. And for example, me, I was taking a shit at work whenever this went live, and I literally said, holy shit, out loud, and probably someone thought I was shitting my pants. So, but what's your gut reaction to this, man? What is, just let me hear it.
So I just watched the episode last night with what's his name from Always Sunny, the mailroom guy. I literally just texted it in the group. It was Pepe Silva.
Oh.
I would just watch the Pepe Silva episode, and if you guys are familiar with Always Sunny, Danny DeVito, his character gets like checked into a mental hospital because he's like just fucking wandering around with like drooling, like
Yeah.
And when they check him in, the cop's like, I think he shit himself. That was literally me. Like, I got checked into a mental health institute, was like, and they're like, be careful. I think he shit himself. When I heard this news, I was like, wow. Like, basically, I thought to myself, I'm like, holy fuck, the Bungie rumors were true. There's no way it wasn't, right? And then again, I was like, well, holy shit. What does that mean?
Before you even continue that, I'll even double down more on that and say that, remember, it was before the show was even in existence, our show, Game Pass Gamecast, I'm talking about, that there were rumors of Microsoft wanting to buy EA 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
EA, and that's the level we're talking about. That I'll double down on, not even say the Bungie acquisition, I'll say the fucking EA rumors were true.
Absolutely true.
I guarantee that at that point, because that's when they started to buy up studios. That's whenever they first announced the In Exile. Well, it was before that, but that's whenever they announced Playground Games. That's when they announced Undead Labs. That's when they announced the Initiative. That E3, right around that time, is whenever we started to hear about that. So, to me, that's like, those rumors were true. They were ready to spend that cash then. Like, they were ready to start moving then. And I bet somebody pulled off, because I've heard rumors and rumblings, and I don't want to say obviously if it's fact, because sometimes people can just say this stuff and it's just to feed into the current narrative or whatever, but there have been rumors of people who, have heard from people that, like, they've been talking about this deal for 2 years now, if not more. Like, that, around that time, whenever they first started talking about the next gen of gaming, when they first revealed Halo Infinite, like that that E3, when they started talking about those things, was when all of this started to come into, when Phil Spencer was fully moving forward with Xbox, fully taking over, was full swing in his position as the head of Xbox. Like, I'll just double down on that. Go ahead and continue by all means, but I just want to throw out there that I fully believe that there were for sure conversations of EA and Microsoft.
Yeah. And, there is a lot of people, there's a lot of speculation on Twitter, there's a lot of speculation on Reddit of them saying, like, oh, first and foremost, I've read a few sentiments, especially of Sony PlayStation fanboys, who I won't name, but I will. Me and Travis will talk about it, post show. I just don't want to, like, it's just not even worth the breath to make it, But we'll talk about it, where people have even come out and said, well, Bethesda hasn't made a good game in 10 years, so who fucking cares? Basically, is the sentiment. It's like, are you living under a rock? Like, you need to seriously curb your bias, because Bethesda has made some really good games. I will admit, are they games that I even like or enjoy? Most likely not really. Like, most of Bethesda's games that have been severe hits, besides Doom and things of that nature, I haven't really cared about. I'll be honest. But it's awesome because they still have been doing special things. And to me, being one of the bigger Elder Scrolls fanboys out there, obviously they haven't done me any services recently, but I'm still like a big enough, I'm like, I understand the world enough to be like, yeah, Bethesda's still the shit, basically, and have they done some things in the past that have made me mad or upset me? Absolutely. And I think that if I held them to task, if I was sitting in a room right now with Todd Howard and I was like, hey man, you really have, not really done anything for the Elder Scrolls fans. What's up with that? I would say that right to his face and not even care. But that's also the type of person I am. And I'm not afraid, if I had media access, which I don't, I wouldn't be afraid to lose the media access. It's why if I was a sports writer, I couldn't cover the Penguins, because I would go into that post-game room and be like, hey, see, Jack Johnson played 23 minutes tonight and he was a -4. What's your answer to that? Why is that a thing? Why are you guys playing him? But like in the Penguins, post-game scrums, it's like, kind of a thing where those interviewers and those media members don't ask those tough questions, because the Penguins are kind of shitty for removing people's access if they ask the hard questions. I'd be the type of person that would just call Todd Howard out to his face and be like, hey man, you guys haven't really done much. Fallout 4 is kind of meh. You guys haven't done anything for the Elder Scrolls series, and those have been your tent poles. Like, what's going on? And
Mm-hmm.
you know, it is what it is. But I think that this move will literally put Microsoft to the test with the we're worried about gamers. We want gamers and we're pro consumer, because they could easily be like, hey, I don't know. I've obviously haven't seen the contract. I don't know the purchase options, but I could easily see it being like, hey, you know, the new Elder Scrolls is going to be an Xbox exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
At least for a year. It's going to be a timed exclusive. Sony does timed exclusives all the times. They don't care about consumers, so why should we? It's going to be an Xbox and PC exclusive for a year. You know, and they would be right to do it, because, you know, Sony hasn't been doing the consumers any favor either. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think, like, overall, it'll put Microsoft to the test, because are you really about the consumer? Because either A, you won't do timed exclusives at all. You won't do exclusive content like Sony does with certain games. You'll just say, hey, you know, we know those guys are scumbags for this and that, but we're going to give it to you the way, you know, you should experience it right away, right off the bat. No timed exclusivity, no time this, no time that. Just enjoy the new Bethesda games. Now, do I think that there will be a Bethesda exclusive that is only on Xbox and PC? Absolutely. But it's not going to be one of the big ones. You know what I mean? So that's one of my biggest things with this acquisition is I don't think Xbox can bully Bethesda into saying, like, yeah, you're only going to release it on Xbox, basically, in PC.
Yeah, and that's kind of touching on, and we could just jump into that, to be honest. Now, I was going to ask that a little bit later, but since you brought it up, you know, that's one of the biggest questions regarding this deal, since really, you know, the move has, I mean, very much so, reverberated across this industry so hard. I mean, this is an absolute industry-shaking move here, because Bethesda has found a way to make itself into that AAA large-scale, not just developer, but publisher as well, in publishing, owning franchises, owning studios, publishing games under Bethesda Softworks. Like, you know, this is such a huge move, like, across just all aspects of the industry. So, you know, the big question regarding this deal is, what does this mean for exclusivity moving forward, both with Microsoft and their supported devices and third parties, you know, outside of Microsoft. You know, we did find out via Bloomberg's Jason Schreier that Microsoft will honor the PS5 console exclusivity commitments with Arcane's Deathloop and Tango Gameworks' Ghostwire Tokyo, but that other games will hit non-Xbox ecosystem platforms outside of, you know, we're talking Xbox Series systems, Xbox One S, I'm sure, and PC, obviously, but they'll arrive on platforms outside of that on a case-by-case basis. So, you know, I want to examine that a little bit. You know, what do you think is case-by-case, Mike? You know, do you truly think this means, you know, Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 5, Starfield 2, whenever it comes out? Because well, even Starfield, the first Starfield in general, I guess we can think, because we don't know when that's coming out. I'm probably next year, late next year, if the earliest. But, you know, will those be Xbox ecosystem exclusives? You know, will Sony see these games come to their platform, you know, after a timed exclusivity, like you were talking about, given their traditional large install base, because of how big the PS4 install base is, that how probably big the PS5 install base is, because more people are gaming now than they were in 2013 when the current gen launched. So that means these player bases are only going to get bigger.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm just going to double down. I don't think the tentpole games, and I don't know, I'm sure it's changed over the years, but to me, when I think of Bethesda, I think of first and foremost Elder Scrolls. That's my bias. And
I think you still do, because that is their owned IP. Fallout is now their owned IP, but Fallout also wasn't created by Bethesda. So
right.
I'm with you, and I think many people are with you just in general. Elder Scrolls is the tentpole. It is the big one. I mean, Fallout is now an equally sized tentpole with it, and probably, I would say, even just with how much Skyrim's been re-released and how many new Fallout games we've seen now since, you know, really, you look at releases with Elder Scrolls, really it's been 2 mainline ones in the past 15 years, and it's like, okay, look at Fallout and look how many games that they've gotten with that
exactly.
Fallout's probably the most, you know, casual known IP, I would think, between now. But go ahead, continue by all means.
Yeah, I just think that I don't see Fallout or Elder Scrolls being held hostage. I just don't think that is really sending the pro-consumer message that Microsoft is really touting to have. You know what I mean? I think that if you're going to send, or if you're going to say that you're pro-consumer, this, that, the other, you really need to, stick to your guns. Now, being pro-consumer doesn't hold you from holding a game like Starfield hostage. That doesn't prevent you from holding a game like Doom hostage as a timed exclusive. So I think that'll be worked on by case-by-case basis. I think they literally mean per game. A new Wolfenstein would be one that I could see being held hostage. There's a lot of games that are like a new Dishonored could be held hostage. Now, is that the best for Microsoft and the studio? That'll be something between the two of them that they discuss, and I'm sure it's in the contract that they're working on, or because it's not going to be finalized till 2021, right? So there's a lot of things and nuances that are going to be added to this agreement, but that is something that is going to 100% happen, and it's not being anti-gamer or anything of that, or anti-consumer. It's literally like, hey, we shout out the big bucks. It's our fucking right. Like, we own that now. Like, it's not going to be like, you can't call us a scumbag, because Sony has never approached Xbox and been like, hey, if you wanted the Uncharted series on your Xbox, on your ecosystem, you'd have to pay us $3 million, because I think Xbox would pay it. Sony has never approached them, and I'm sure Microsoft has never approached Sony for that deal either, to be fair. So I'm not condemning Sony for it, but those two have never worked in conjunction to bring a game to, a system like that. So I will say, there's going to be timed exclusivity, whether it's, the best for the consumer or not. I don't think it is, but it is what it is. It's the way we live right now with these two games, and Microsoft's going to own that, so they can do whatever the hell they want with it, and it's their right. It's what they have. They pay the big bucks to do it, so I'm not going to fault them for it. It's going to be a bummer for Sony people if cool games, get held back, especially if the big tentpoles are held back, which again, I doubt it, but again, it's Microsoft's right and prerogative to do so if they want to.
Yeah, and just to, I guess, set a little context here, because I still do share a very similar viewpoint on what you're saying. I agree on a lot of points of what you're saying. I think, and I kind of pointed this out when this first was announced. The first thing that came to my mind was, this is going to be like a Mojang Minecraft deal, where this IP is so big that Microsoft really Mojang probably came whenever they were doing this acquisition. I'm sure Mojang, those who are running it, Sketch and the other people who are running it, probably said like, hey, we'll sell, we'll do this, but in the agreement you have to keep, if we're still developing these games, we want to do them multi-platform. We don't want to be restricted to Xbox. We don't want to be restricted to just PC. We want these games to continue selling on all platforms, because Minecraft was out on PS3, 360, on, probably, it was definitely on Xbox One, but, PS4, now Switch, it's on everything. I mean, Minecraft is an IP that is far-reaching, that, to me, that's what this rang about, that this is there's still going to be things on the table. There's still going to be, like, that's too much money to leave off the table. Think about this alone, and I got into an argument with some fucking idiot online, shocker, on Twitter, who, I said, and fully, right after this was actually to Benji Sales, whenever he brought it up, I said, in my opinion, I don't see any way that the Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5, possibly even Starfield, aren't available on PS5 as well. Everything we've heard from them seems to indicate they have a strong control of their publishing, and they still want that market. And I said, who knows? It's still very exciting. And somebody was just like, one, they spelled "there" wrong. They said THERE. They said they're definitely not coming to PlayStation. One, I corrected him on his grammar, obviously. But two, I said Skyrim alone had a combined player count as of this month of 18.2 million players across both PS3 and PS4. Between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4, PlayStation accounted for more than 21.3 million players. It's almost 40 million users. While Xbox One, Xbox in general, I guess, Xbox One can beat that with a combined 53.3 million users. 40 million users is a lot of fucking people. And I still stand by that. That is a fucking player base that you can't turn away. I mean, that's the biggest. Bethesda games reach a casual audience comparative to so many other RPG developers / publishers. Like, it's much more far-reaching, I think, at this point because of the popularity of Skyrim, because of the popularity of Fallout, and both making those much more adventure-style games comparative to deep RPGs to an extent. I mean, you can make both of them, obviously, deep RPGs if you play them a certain way, but they're very much more comparative to where they started, where these franchises are right now, are much more consumer-friendly, or casual-friendly, I mean. So, to me, I fully believe this deal is much more for Game Pass. I fully, 1000% feel like this is a Game Pass first decision because I wouldn't be shocked by any means if Microsoft, Phil Spencer says, no, Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5, if you want to play them on a console, you got to buy an Xbox. Like, that's their prerogative. They own these IP now. They control them. They could do whatever. Like, if they want to put them on a fucking, $5 Tiger Games handheld system, they can fucking do that if they want. I mean, that'd be fucking stupid to do that, obviously, but they can do that if they want. They don't have to do anything that, they don't have to put it on PlayStation, but to me, that's such a large player base and that's so against the messaging they put out that I'd be hard pressed to see, like, those games are so big. Now, I totally agree with you that The Evil Within, Wolfenstein, Dishonored, something like that I fully believe those games could be very much in the, hey, this is an Xbox exclusive now. Hey, this is a, where they even leave, which, and we'll kind of touch on it too a little bit, but, and I'll touch on it more in a couple minutes, but where they are being let, Phil Spencer said they're letting Bethesda still run semi-independently, but I could see Microsoft having more of the, hey, these could potentially be like, these are from our studio Arcane, not a Bethesda studio Arcane. Like, I could see it with those games maybe being reworked a little bit and having Bethesda still be, hey, they're tentpoles from Bethesda Game Studios and even, from developers like id or somebody like that who has such a big namesake in the industry for so long that like they could stand on their own. But an Arcane studio a studio I fucking adore that maybe now would benefit more from falling more under the Microsoft branding umbrella than a Bethesda, maybe, to be able to give them more, hey, this is a Microsoft first party studio than a Bethesda first party studio. Something like that. I could see those games being like, you could play it. The only place you could play it is on PC or on Xbox via Xbox Game Pass. Like, or something like you could only play it on Xbox. But
I totally agree with you. Yeah. And I think I just want to chip in really quickly. I don't want to like interrupt your flow, but I think the cost of how much they spent to acquire Bethesda, like, just kind of hints at that there will be exclusives. The Evil Within could be one that you completely see come off of PlayStation. And it wouldn't shock me. Doom, it's like, if you really want to play those games, like you said, buy a PC. I don't know what to tell you. So, yeah. And that's, again, they paid the money for it. If Sony wanted it, Sony has enough amazing first-party RPG studios, but if you want it, go buy it.
Oh, and I also forgot
it's still America in that sense that, like, unfortunately, if you have a lot of money, you can pretty much get whatever you want.
You saying Doom too, not to interrupt you, but I forgot to throw this in Button Mash too. It was like announced while I was on the way home from the office, but Doom Eternal coming to Xbox Game Pass on October 1st. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but not on PC.
Will it be
yet.
On PC? No. Okay.
No, it will be. They confirmed it's coming to PC Game Pass, just not on the 1st. It'll be a little bit later than that, but it is coming, and we're already seeing it right off the bat. Now, granted, Doom, the original Doom, has been on Game Pass a multitude of times and has been kind of a staple in Game Pass as a library on and off for the most part, but that's it. That we're already starting to see some of this take effect. And even speaking of Game Pass, we kind of transitioned into that because I wanted to, focus on Game Pass a bit. So let's talk Game Pass, because I think, like I said, I think this is really the crux of this deal. I think realistically, anything involving Xbox moving forward, as we've kind of said before, that Game Pass is their real next-gen system. It's not, the Series S, the Series X, they want you to buy these fucking systems. 1000% they want you to. But they're more worried about you getting in their ecosystem than you going and buying their new hardware right now. Like, you'll eventually buy that, sure. But they can get you in the door any day of the week with Game Pass. So they're more worried about that because that could happen at any time. So we know now that all of Bethesda's titles moving forward will be coming to Day Pass day and date, following the initiative that all first-party games from Microsoft will be coming to the service on release, which, yes, includes Elder Scrolls 6, Fallout 5, Starfield, you fucking name it. And that's just future titles. We're talking even more back catalog. Fallout 3 and 4, Oblivion, they're already on there on and off and stuff, but still, Morrowind, Skyrim, The Evil Within, Doom Eternal now on the first of this, or next week, fucking Thursday next week, it's coming out on Game Pass. I said, it's absolutely asinine. Wolfenstein, Dishonored, Rage, ESO, and Fallout, Fallout 76, they're probably going to get all of the DLC that comes out, paid or unpaid. It's going to be like the Destiny 2 deal that they got for Game Pass. That it's like, if you have Game Pass Ultimate, you have all of the Destiny 2 expansions and DLC, the current one, it's included. Like, you don't have to pay any additional. If you have Game Pass Ultimate, you can get in, you can play the newest content on these live service games, period. So you got to imagine that's going to be the same with that. So everything to me about this game, or about this deal, screams Game Pass depth. So obviously this will be one of the biggest deals in gaming for quite a long time, but Mike, will we be seeing the move is this the move that forces the hand of Sony, hell, even Nintendo, companies whose IP are vastly strong enough to force consumers' hands by, you have to, there's no other way. If you want this game, go buy it full price. There's no way to, granted, PS Now and stuff, but it's not, I still don't put that in the same camp as Game Pass. And even with PlayStation 5, they're starting the PS Plus collection, which has some back catalog games, but it's not in the same breath as, to me personally, as Game Pass and what's offered on Game Pass. So, but these publishers and hardware manufacturers, that their first party titles, their Zeldas, Mario stuff, they don't go on sale. They don't do, they're strong enough they could sell at $60 for their life for the most part. So, is this the deal that kind of, forces those IP holders and those companies whose IP are so strong to adopt a Netflix style a la carte game subscription service like Game Pass? Is this the pillar that at least makes them say, okay, we got to figure out a way to combat this at least a little bit?
Yeah, I totally think so. And I love Mario. I love Zelda. I love it enough that I bought a Nintendo Switch that has sat on my dresser since March. And I have never plugged it in. I don't love them to the point that I want to pay $60 for a game that came out 2 years ago. I just don't love it that much. And I think that there's a lot of other people that are on the fence like me, that, man, I would really love to play the new Zelda or the new Mario or whatever, but I really don't want to pay that price point, because with Microsoft, I can get Elder Scrolls with my $15 subscription price. You know what I mean? I think that there is going to be a lot of pressure from that. Now, obviously, I don't know that Zelda and Mario are two monsters that I don't think you'll ever be able to force Nintendo to offer them as like games of a service. I just don't see it. They are so monstrous, and rightfully so, that people are going to buy them. They won't hold money back to not play those games, basically. But I don't see it stopping from, like, if they were to like Mario Tennis or Mario Kart or Super Smash Brothers, things of that nature, I could see. I don't know. This one is a tough.
And I'm not saying it's a, hey, tomorrow it's happening type of deal. Does this at least, and I'm sure Game Pass
it's on their radar now.
Yeah, and that's the more pressing thing that I'm looking at of, I think this, if anything, at least, and granted, like we've talked about before, Xbox and Microsoft are fighting a different war than Sony and really Nintendo. They're not worried about console wars right now. They're worried about ecosystems and battling over that, but they're not worried about, they don't, it keeps going back to, they don't fucking care how you play their games as long as you're playing their games or playing them in their ecosystem. That's all they care about. They don't give a fuck if you come in at the $15 a month level with no fucking console, no fucking PC, and you just play it on your phone. They don't give a shit. That's cool. They're good with that. Like, that's you getting into their ecosystem. Nobody, that's the point of like all of this, that if that didn't push, that's why I think like this is not just a financial deal that is going to really shake the industry for a long time, but this is okay, the one publisher we knew always was very, and to a degree now, they've become more and more corporate, some would say, being Bethesda, over a longer time, they were once a very, hey, here's our fucking source code to Morrowind. Hey, here's fuck around with it. Go ahead. We don't care. Mod the hell out of this game. We don't care. To now we're seeing with, when they started into the creation engine and whatnot for Skyrim and Fallout 4 and stuff, we're seeing paid mods and things like that, but Bethesda's always been that kind of staple of, for the players by the players type of deal, where their games have always been for, hardcore gamers, casual gamers, everyone in between. They had something for you to offer, and they offered it in a way that was very, you didn't see, they were a AAA game publisher who didn't do AAA game publishing tactics or had that persona around them. So, now having them gone and now seeing all of these IP that are now, if they want, Microsoft can pull the trigger and say, no, the next Doom's on Xbox only, or Xbox and PC only. It's console exclusive to Xbox. The next Elder Scrolls is console exclusive to Xbox. Oh, Starfield, you've been waiting to hear a lot about that? Cool. Well, you're going to have to check out an Inside Xbox to learn about it because it's only coming to Xbox. Fallout 5, you better believe you're going to play that game, but not on a PS5. You're going to play it on an Xbox. Like, yeah, they can do that. And that's why I think, for a lack of better words, they have the industry by the balls right now, where they're saying like, it's hard to, and their CEO, Microsoft, what's Microsoft CEO's name?
I'm not sure.
Oh, Satya Nadella. That's it. I couldn't, I knew it began with an S, but him even saying like, we're not done acquiring studios yet, potentially. Like, we'll still move on that. And his one quote was saying, it's hard, it's a very difficult thing to internally build studios. And I mean, we're seeing that with the initiative, that it sounds like they're making something special there, but that's a long process where Microsoft has an asinine amount of money that they're able to just pull and buy with cash. They went and bought some of the biggest fucking names in gaming, hands down, that it's like, that just is such a, I just can't get over how big of a fucking move this is. Like, this is something that is like, you read about on Reset Era or Reddit or a like, pie in the sky type of thing. Like, oh, if you could have one, or PlayStation or Xbox or Nintendo acquire one IP or, one franchise to do first party, or, what would you have them do or whatever? Like, it almost falls in that, like, games we want to bang type of episode we did back in the, like, pie in the sky type of things, like, that you never would have thought would happen. Well, it fucking happened.
Yeah. And you know what? You brought up a really good point that I hadn't, like, necessarily considered before. And it's the point that, like, basically I was going into this acquisition with the understanding that, like, besides Morrowind, those big tentpole games were always available on PlayStation. But again, like you said, Microsoft at this point could really just strong arm them and be like, no, you're not going to be on PlayStation anymore. Like I said, I don't know that Bethesda, I don't know what the deal is going to look like, but Zelda's never going to be on Xbox or PC. Neither is Mario. And you can bet your ass Uncharted and The Last of Us is never going to be on Microsoft platforms. So why should the Bethesda games be on Sony or Nintendo's platforms if Microsoft went out and bought them? Like, that's Microsoft's IP now. So, yeah. So now I might actually be kind of thinking, like, again, it's not the pro-consumer thing to do, but who cares? Microsoft owns them now. If they want to not let you play Fallout or Elder Scrolls on your PS5, that's their right, because you can't play Sony or PlayStation's games on your Xbox. So why should you be able to play those on, your console per se?
No, definitely. let's change direction a little bit. I mean, it's still staying in the same realm, but just a little bit. So, Jeff Grubb over at GamesBeat penned a really, really interesting article that I've kind of been hoping somebody would kind of touch on, a bigger name in games media that would kind of bring up. This seems like a very much adjacent Schreier-esque piece that is, really investigative, informative, that I highly recommend. It will definitely be in the description of this episode. Go over there. Jeff's great at his job. He is a stellar games journalist. So go over there, check this out. But, it's something I've been wanting to have touched on for really about a year or so now, but this Bethesda deal has really started to kind of put it back in the forefront of gaming. And it's the actual sustainability and, vitality of blockbuster AAA gaming. So let me read a passage from Jeff's article here. Quote, "Making video games is a difficult and volatile business. Blockbuster budgets inflated over the last 10 years to well over $100 million for a single-player top-tier release. And that makes every game a massive bet that could prove disastrous. On top of this, publishers and developers struggle to predict what consumers will want. The audience has fickle tastes, and even when a studio is working on something with a proven appeal, like a military shooter, they must compete against ingrained properties, often from teams with even bigger budgets. This leads to escalating investment costs as studios try to compete. Is your game not as pretty as Red Dead and not as big as Assassin's Creed? Well, that sounds like a game I can wait to play until it's on sale." So, and he also quotes, live service games, storefronts, subscriptions, things like that and more to highlight this point. But the big thing is clear. It looks like there is a bubble with AAA gaming that could potentially burst in the near future from a publishing end, from providing these, so many of these, these budgets keep going up for game development and things like this, that you see games, don't get, they'll come out and they'll be a critical hit, but not a commercial success type of thing, and we'll see them benefit from sales and things like that, which is good and bad at the same time. So, while this is clearly Bethesda's way of giving a financial commitment to its teams, to its development teams in an industry that loves contracted work, so providing a more stable income at the end of the day, or influx of cash to hopefully provide that stable income, to provide more full-time opportunities potentially compared to contract work, and that may just be thinking a little too optimistic, I'm sure. But, does this help secure Bethesda's ability to continue producing both AAA blockbusters like The Elder Scrolls and Fallout, but also continue making that double A mid-tier, I don't even say that, but like the lower AAA lower AAA, financial commitment projects like Prey, like Dishonored, like The Evil Within, games like that are usually think pieces, comparative to what you're seeing with a more traditional fantasy RPG, post-apocalyptic RPG. You're looking at more unique narratives and plots and settings and stuff that sometimes just doesn't gel with casual consumers. Do you think this helps solidify Bethesda's future doing that?
I would say yes. I would say that it will give them a little bit more, latitude to create projects like that, which, compared to their tentpoles, you could almost consider passion projects, which we know they're not, because you're not compensated for those necessarily, or it takes a long time for you to be compensated with us. Basically, this podcast, passion project for us. But with them, I would almost consider those other games somewhat like passion projects, that it seems like they were using Elder Scrolls, Skyrim remakes and re-releases to like fund that kind of stuff. I would say absolutely. I would say also, when you bring up contracted work, I would say I hope Microsoft sees the debacle that has become the Halo Infinite development and use that as an excuse to be like, yeah, clearly like contract work isn't the best. Maybe we should just invest in companies and give them more guaranteed employees and money, because it clearly works better for other companies when they have that type of atmosphere around them. So I would say absolutely, whenever you look at, are they going to be able to make these games with less contract work? I would say for sure they're going to be able to keep more people on staff. They're going to be able to make sure that these game developers feel like their jobs are stable, because I feel like a lot of people have worked on Halo Infinite, and this is coming straight from Glassdoor and other sources, that it's like they usually just use Halo as a stepping stone. Like, hey, I did contract work on Halo. It's a pretty big name. That's pretty cool. I need to work on your game because I need work. I obviously would love to see contract work go by the wayside, and you alluded to that also. And I think that's a pipe dream. That's obviously never going to happen because companies save too much money doing it, and people are too willing to do that contract work. Which, to each their own. I don't do that kind of work, so I'm not going to bash one person for doing that or scold someone for doing it. It is what it is. But
Yeah.
I would love to see people have more, concrete jobs, because I think we would get better games and it would be a lot less toxic of a workplace per se. So I hope to see, and I believe that we will see, more people staying on at Bethesda, less contract work, and them produce those side games a little bit more with more freedom. That'll be awesome for them, and I think everyone at Bethesda will certainly be more happy about that.
No, definitely. And I think so too. And even just with what you said, it kind of, what made me kind of think of this question or this approach to it really was, and you even saying, hopefully this provides that, or you see a lot of developers early on in their career or, whatnot, really want to push to go the AAA route. Hey, I want to go in, I want to work at a AAA studio, get my experience, get that name on my resume, get that, my work into a portfolio if they're on the art and design end, get that into a portfolio that has 343 industries at the bottom, has a, Bethesda Game Studios at the bottom, has a, EA Motive at the bottom, something like that says like, hey, I've been a part of these large AAA studios that I could go and then take. And when we want to start a passion project or work for a smaller developer, work for an indie and work at being, start up my own studio potentially, I have that experience of working in AAA gaming. You see a lot of that but really what makes me, kind of got me in the mindset for this question when I was, typing out the run of show and stuff this week. Whenever I was listening to Podcast Unlocked this week, IGN's Xbox podcast, and Ryan McCaffrey brought up the question, which I'm like, a lot of people, I don't like to speculate necessarily on people's professions and their job. And, especially in this industry with how we're saying it's so fluid. There's so much contract work. There's so much, this and that. Like, I don't like speculating on somebody's livelihood where that doesn't necessarily feel right all the time. But I think for something like this and this question that we're talking about with, how volatile the industry is, how much this bubble looks like it's getting ready to burst because there's so much money being dumped in and maybe the return not being there on the back end of, what's going to happen with that, Ryan brought up, like, what if, what do you think Todd Howard's mindset is with all this? Is this something that could potentially, hey, he's going to stay on no matter what. He's going to be there long-term, whatever, because you would have to imagine Todd's been at Bethesda for fucking 30 years now or whatever,
It's baby at this point.
Well, and that's the thing. He's still in a game director's role, but you got to think this guy has a stake in the company. Like, he has to have some kind of stock in the company, something where it makes the most sense where he has or not stock, but like he has investment into this company at this point where it makes sense to him where, where in this sale, he is getting kickback from this. But, it may be one of those things where we see, one of the things Jeff brought up in his article that kind of my mindset was putting a lot of that in Ryan's quotes together, saying like, maybe this is something where Todd gets in here, makes money off of this, and, after a couple years, after a year or two or whatever, once Starfield gets out, he sees that shipped off or whatever, because he is very passionate about Starfield from what it sounds like. It's their first new IP in 20 years or whatever it is. So, I completely understand. So once he gets that out, maybe backing off and getting out of games for a little bit, taking that lump sum of cash and rolling, because the bubble might break and there might not be that kind of money for at least, who knows, maybe a couple years or something like that, where we're seeing investments. But this Microsoft deal, I think he was the team at Bethesda in general and ZeniMax, overarching at ZeniMax, that was smart enough to say, what, this is a chance to finally financially commit long-term to our vision of Bethesda and what that does. And that's why I think it's so important that this deal went through and was a smart deal for them. The reason that they've been independent for so, quote unquote, independent for so long and private for so long is because they wanted that freedom to go and do that. Have the AAA budget, have the big scale blockbuster games, but have their freedom to go and do that. So to me, kind of putting that all together is, who knows, maybe we do see Todd go away after a couple years and then come back and maybe start his own thing after that, taking that lump sum of money and starting up something fresh, something new. So there's just so much that we don't know about this, obviously, but it's just guys like him have stayed in this industry for so long because they're smart. They're, granted, for all the, fucking tell me lies, memes, and shit about Todd Howard, whatever, I'll be honest, the guy knows how to fucking make a game. Because whether they're good, bad, indifferent, they're still unique. They're still great overall, like compared to a lot of RPGs out there and a lot of people who try to mimic the Elder Scrolls model and whatnot. Like, and that's kind of leading me into my last thing I want to talk about before we round out the show. But, nobody's really been able to, everyone's tried to imitate the Elder Scrolls Fallout, mentality and what they do and the product, but nobody's ever come close enough to like they did or like Bethesda does. So,
right.
It's going to be really interesting. I'm curious to see kind of where they go, but, kind of to round out the whole, discussion that we had, and kind of piggybacking off that idea, I mentioned it a little bit before, but, Phil Spencer has gone on record by saying Bethesda will still run semi-independently under Microsoft. He spoke to CNET earlier this week about, obviously the big deal and everything like that, but he made it clear that, while Bethesda games will adopt some of Microsoft's new practices, including launching into Game Pass and becoming playable through game streaming and all that jazz, the company will retain some of the, autonomy that has resulted in some of the biggest games of all time. So, and he's here quoted saying, quote, it is about the culture of these teams, Spencer explained. They're not about becoming us. I think the culture and vibe of Bethesda really, it's really integral to what they do. It is really integral to, especially when we're talking, RPGs and whatnot, it has a certain feel. It has a certain vibe. It has a certain tone. You know what a Bethesda game is when you play it, especially a Bethesda game studio title, of, home developed title. That much of the industry, like I was saying, tried to replicate, tried to build off of for so long with not as much success as they had hoped for. So, clearly we're not time travelers, but how do you see this shaking out for Bethesda from a consumer response long term? Are we still looking at Bethesda the same way we do, for how many years now with the games they make and what they do and having this fan base as it is long term? I'm still in the camp of me personally, ZeniMax knowing that they weren't, hey, we're not in a financially bad situation at all. So, the sale wasn't necessary. They didn't need to sell. They for sure didn't need to sell Bethesda, ZeniMax in general. Like, they didn't need to sell at all, but knowing, there had to be some contractual things added in that sale that helps solidify Bethesda staying Bethesda, however you want to qualify that. But who knows, so what do you think is, the projection of Bethesda under this new deal? Do you think we're going to still see the same Bethesda just under Microsoft and working with Microsoft and becoming, synonymous, these two giants next to each other and really being a dynamic duo more of sorts? Or, will some of that fade over time?
I think Phil Spencer's saying all the right things, trying to say that Bethesda is going to basically retain their identity. Not a whole lot is going to change with them because they've been so successful. Why would we want to bring them in and then make them change everything around? Which I do honestly believe Phil Spencer in that. And I think, these two topics coming back to back with you talking about Todd Howard potentially exiting the game development side of life, I think as long as Todd Howard's around, Bethesda will stay Bethesda. But, as with everything, over time, things change. People come and go. Things change for better or worse. So I could see Bethesda over time becoming a little different, but I don't think that it's going to be a Microsoft-driven thing. Microsoft's not going to demand change from them. I think that it'll be Bethesda changing over time. I also think that, it's a very important, Phil Spencer says, that Bethesda does the things they do because of they are Bethesda, right? So I don't necessarily see too much changing under this switch. I just think that with everything over time, everything changes. Your life changes, your beliefs change, everything changes. So it's gonna change for better or worse. And I just don't see the Microsoft deal potentially being like the primary catalyst, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I personally think Microsoft's already, and granted, we're not even at next gen yet. We gotta see. I mean, it's gonna take a couple years really to see this fully. I mean, granted, technically they're in principle to own Bethesda, so they're doing basically falling under Bethesda or Microsoft at this point. You get what I'm saying? That they don't technically. It's not going to be finalized till whatever the second half of 2021 or whatever. But it's going to take a little time to see how this all kind of nets out and whatnot when the earthquake stops. But to me, I think there's no other partner I would want Bethesda with than Microsoft. If we're talking being acquired by one of the primary console manufacturers between Xbox or between Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, Bethesda or Microsoft is the one I would want Bethesda under, because one, obviously the relationship that they've had long term, not just from a development end and whatnot, but also from, you've seen with promotions, marketing, everything. Like, they've been the ones to work with Microsoft to get deals done, to have these promotional bundles and things like that. Like, they're on so many facets, they are on the same page with Microsoft. They have worked with them in so many regards that it just business style makes sense. But from a development end, Microsoft seems to be very much in the camp now. In Microsoft in 2020, we'll see how that lasts. We'll see what next gen brings, all that. But Microsoft is very much in a mindset of it's taking the Nintendo approach of, look at Halo Infinite. You never fucking delay launch titles. Never. I mean, very, very, very rarely. It has to be a dumpster fire, which it may be, from what we're hearing, so who knows? But to me, like, you never delay launch titles. So to me, they're taking the old adage that Nintendo's taken of, a delayed game is eventually good, but a bad game released is a bad game. Like, a bad game rushed is bad. It will always be bad. Like, taking the time to rely on these dev studios, giving them the time. They have the money. Phil Spencer knows that his parent company has the money. He knows that Xbox can get money from Microsoft to funnel these projects. And we've clearly seen that with $7.5 billion in cash being thrown at fucking Bethesda. So to me, the way they're going to, and they're granted, he's saying all the right things. We'll see how that plays out. But everything they've done so far, being so consumer friendly, being so developer friendly, with how much people have been saying, like, a lot of people, myself included, whenever Game Pass was first really, shown off and really first been like, hey, it's coming to Game Pass. Hey, it's released on Game Pass. Even PS Plus to an extent. Well, what does that do for developers? What are they getting paid? Obviously, they're getting, a check written to them, but do they get paid per download? Is it like a Spotify, streaming thing? Is it a Netflix type deal? But while we don't have concrete details, we've heard developers say, like, yeah, this is great. Like, we love being on Game Pass. This is what we want. So, to me, I really think this is the best trajectory for Bethesda. One, as we kind of talked about earlier, it solidifies, in my perspective, it solidifies making sure that not just the blockbuster games exist, like the Elder Scrolls 6. And I think, too, like, we didn't even really talk about Elder Scrolls 6 or Fallout 5 or whatever, like the games themselves, because I think this is so much bigger than that right now. And we've talked about Elder Scrolls 6 before and whatnot. That's obviously one of our most anticipated games of all time at this point. But, I think this helps the development of that. I think this provides much more. And that's not just like, when you think of acquiring a studio or whatever, people are thinking, oh, you get X, Y, and Z out of this. But, Todd Howard is on record saying, Starfield coming up has seen the biggest overhaul in its engine, or for an engine for their game ever. And that has always been one of the big cruxes, and that's why it's taking so long. But having Microsoft's, one, finance to be able to do all this, but two, the resources of 15 other fucking studios that you can lean on to say, hey, I like how you guys handle fast travel in your game. Can you show me the code on that? Can we see how that works? Like, hey, I like how you guys, render your environments. What's the programming end of that look like for you? Maybe we want to integrate that into our engine. That's all possible now without going through hoops and hoops and hoops and stuff. It's all connected now. That I could see that helping the Elder Scrolls 6 development, helping the Fallout 5 develop. Like, I could see that happening and getting these games maybe just a little bit faster. So I think this is the best case scenario for Bethesda. If they were going to sell, this is the right first console manufacturer to become a first party to actually sell to. I don't think they would potentially have and we'll see, it's very early and we will see, but potentially have the rope and have the leash and have the creative freedom, knock on wood, to do what they do under Sony, who has very strict guidelines, it seems like, for how they want it, because, hey, their bread and butter works. Their third person action adventure titles, narrative heavy, they work, but more so on the freedom end, that doesn't necessarily fit with Xbox always being originally always being a home for RPGs experiences. So, and I don't think, Nintendo, I don't think they would ever be in a position to really want to pursue that, these being Western RPGs and whatnot. So I don't know, man. I think this is great. I think this is a great move. I think this is such a big get for Xbox, not just, and just a big get for gamers, because we didn't even really talk about it, but you're going to be able to play Elder Scrolls 6 for fucking $15 at launch on any device. Any device you own, you'll probably be able to play it on. Whether it's a PC, whether it's a phone, whether it's your console, whether it's whatever, you're going to be able to play it. However you play games, there's a good chance you'll be able to play it that day for $16 or $15, whether it's streaming it or whatever. So that's just mind-blowing to me. I don't know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the future now. But Mike, let's end the party chat for this week while we wrap up the show. So if you're new to the show, Party Chat is a segment every week where we're going to propose one question at the end of the show that we want to discuss. Could be as simple as what's your favorite story beat of a game, or, what you've been playing during quarantine, or even more in depth, like why this negative stigma around gaming still exists. And after answering ourselves, we'll kick it over to you to tweet or email your responses to the question over on our Twitter at GC Podcast, and we'll read some of our favorite responses the following week. Last week's question was sales of both Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 and Marvel's Avengers being predominantly digital. Do you see the upcoming console generation being the final that is heavily physical game focused? And if so, how many years in? And email from Mark H over there said, digital will probably be as close to the majority as it can be for sales this console generation, but physical versions will still remain strong given that most of the world still doesn't have great internet access to justify cutting it cold turkey. Fair point. And something I agree with too. We need to get better internet access all around the globe. This week's question though, Mike, in dealing with Bethesda, what is the first Bethesda title you are planning to play when the back catalog hits Game Pass?
Oh boy.
And now granted, they already have some games on there before all of this, but Bethesda game that you have or haven't played, what's the first thing you're thinking of now once their whole back catalog eventually hits?
Probably getting to play Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas again. Just because, especially Fallout 3, because I do have it on PC, but it just doesn't run. Like, it crashes constantly. So I'm really excited to get to play Fallout 3 again. I know it's kind of a boring answer because it's an old game and not a new game that I haven't played, but that game's so good, and I really love a lot of the quests that are available in that game make me really like that game. Now, I do think New Vegas is probably better overall, but I just can't get away from loving that game. There's just something about it.
Oh, definitely. But at the same time, too, on Game Pass, comes the Game Pass, you can play it on your phone. Like, you take that with you anywhere you want once that comes on there, I guarantee you. So, it's just going to be crazy. The possibilities are fucking wild right now in gaming. Video games are so fucking cool. On my end, see, I played Oblivion, I played Skyrim, I played all the Elder Scrolls games all the way through. Like, those are games I traditionally repetitively play. Those are in my wheelhouse. To be honest, probably it'd probably be something more along the lines of like being able to actually take like I'm more excited about taking like Oblivion with me or Morrowind or something like that. These games that I love to play that I can't play on Switch or something like that, and take them with me. Or getting
On the
into
xCloud?
Yes, on xCloud.
This merger, this Xbox Game Pass, all this shit is like enough to push me to buy either a Samsung Note or when the new Pixels come out. Like, I think I'm gonna switch from Apple because there's no reason for me to have an iPhone when I could just sit at work when we're dead and just sit there and play Oblivion. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry, not happening.
No. Yeah. And that's what I mean. Like, I'm more excited about that. So I'm more excited. I guess my answer really would be probably playing like Oblivion, Morrowind, one of the older titles on the go that I've been wanting to for so long. Because I remember back in the day, they had a PSP version of Oblivion in the works, and it got canned. And I was so fucking pissed. Now, granted, it wasn't going to be the full version, I'm sure, of that game, because technology wasn't there at that point. But I got so hyped on that and was devastated as a fucking 12-year-old kid or whatever back when that game came out that they fucking axed that version. So I've always wanted that, to be able to take games like that, these large-scale RPGs that for once aren't Skyrim, because that's on everything, and I played that so many times, and I played that mobile now on Switch, that it's like I'm ready to play these other games, Fallout 4, Fallout 3, things like that on the go. So really, I guess the first Bethesda title is all the Bethesda titles, playing them on xCloud and on Game Pass now, mobile at least. So, Mike, I think that's going to do it for our episode this week. Why don't you tell people where they can find you, talk all things Bethesda, Xbox, all the jazz we talked about this week. Where can they find you on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter at TOYSXLDIER and on Twitch at MP_ToySoldier. And why don't you let them know where they can find you at on the internet, so you don't have to say nice, and say it like with an awkward transition. I should just be transitioning this.
What a guy. What a fucking guy, man. This guy.
Episode 65, I figured it out, folks.
Yeah, episode 65. No awkward transitions, except if they're from me, because that's usually most of my awkward transitions. Anyways, as always, I'm your host, Travis White, aka Traveless, on most internet platforms, including Twitter at Traveless_, that's TRAVLESS_. You can also find me streaming time to time on twitch.tv/Traveless_, same as Twitter. And if you want to play some video games with me over on Xbox Live, you can do so by just adding me. Just regular Traveless, that's TRAVLESS, and we'll play some video games. And with that being said, I don't know what you're... Who?
I have to bring that up
Who?
I have to bring it up every once in a while.
I don't know who you're talking about. That's weird, huh? That's a name I haven't heard in quite some time. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this has been your newest episode of the Game Pass Gamecast, your weekly go-to podcast for all things Xbox, Xbox Game Pass, and PC gaming, including news, rumors, and conversations around them damn good video games. You can catch new episodes of the show when they drop each and every Friday morning on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all other major podcast services. So be sure to subscribe to us, rate us, review us, all that jazz, wherever you get a podcast at, and follow us on Twitter at GPGC Podcast. Stay up to date with everything regarding the show, video games like, and our dope giveaways. And with that being said, Mike, that's going to do it for our episode this week. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening, sharing, and being a part of our growing community. Game on, wash your hands, listen to the doctors, Black Lives Matter, and we will see you next week.